My daughter called me ordinary, basic, and told me that everyone gives up things for their kids, so I shouldn't expect special thanks for doing what moms are supposed to do. She rolled her eyes when I talked about working 3 jobs to pay for her violin lessons. She brushed off the years I went without new clothes so she could have dance costumes. She laughed when I said I'd given up my dreams of nursing school to help hers come true. "Everyone makes sacrifices, Mom," she said with the mean voice that only comes from never losing anything that mattered. "That's just what parents do. Stop acting like you're some kind of hero." But she was wrong about giving up things being ordinary. She was about to learn the difference between choosing to give something up and having it ripped away from you. While she thought my giving up things was no big deal because I chose to do it, I was planning to teach her what real loss feels like. The kind that breaks your heart and leaves you with nothing but memories of what you used to love. I raced Amanda by giving up all my own dreams so she could have hers instead. After her father died in a car crash when she was 4, leaving us with nothing but insurance money that barely paid for the funeral, I became the person who built a life I'd never had the chance to live myself. I worked the early shift at Peterson's Bakery starting at 4 a.m., making dough and filling display cases while most people still slept. My afternoons were spent cleaning houses for rich families on the west side of town, scrubbing their marble counters and organizing their huge closets that were bigger than our whole apartment. Evenings found me answering phones for Dr. Martinez's office, setting up appointments and filing insurance papers until my eyes hurt from staring at computer screens. Every dollar I made went toward Amanda's future. I wore the same winter coat for 8 years, patched and repatched until it was more thread than fabric. I cut my own hair with kitchen scissors in our bathroom mirror. I bought generic cereal and store-brand everything, stretching meals with rice and potatoes until payday came around again. But Amanda never went without. Not violin strings, not dance shoes, not the fees for summer music camps that cost more than I made in a month. I had wanted to be a nurse once. I'd even been accepted to the nursing program at community college with a partial scholarship that would have changed everything. I dreamed of helping people, of having a career that mattered, of wearing scrubs with my name on the pocket instead of bakery uniforms that smelled like yeast and sugar. I'd imagined myself working with sick kids, comforting scared children and their worried parents, using my hands to heal instead of just to clean and serve. But dreams don't pay for groceries or rent or the million small needs of a growing child. When Amanda's father got cancer, those dreams became things we couldn't afford. When he died, they became impossible. So I folded them up and put them away like winter clothes in spring, telling myself they'd still be there when the season changed again. But seasons change, and sometimes when you finally open that storage box, you find that bugs have eaten holes through everything you thought you'd saved. Instead, I put all that lost hope into Amanda's future. When she showed interest in music at age 6, humming along to classical pieces on the radio, I sold my grandmother's old sewing machine, the only valuable thing I'd inherited, to buy her a violin. It was a beautiful thing, cherry wood with silver strings that caught the light like spider webs heavy with morning dew. The music store owner, Mr. Kowalski, had tears in his eyes when I counted out the cash, all 1s and 5s saved over months from my tip jar at the bakery. When Amanda decided she wanted to try ballet too, I picked up extra house cleaning jobs to pay for lessons at Miss Catherine's Dance Academy, the fanciest studio in 3 counties. I'd watch through the window as she learned to point her toes and hold her arms like graceful bird wings, my heart swelling with pride even as my back ached from scrubbing floors all day to pay for those lessons. By age 10, Amanda wanted to learn piano as well. All the great music writers played more than one instrument, she explained with the serious look only kids can bring to their passions. I worked through Christmas and New Year's, cleaning office buildings while everyone else celebrated, to earn the money for a used piano that took up half our living room. The delivery men had to remove our front door to get it inside, and for weeks afterward, Amanda would wake up early just to run her fingers over the keys before school. Those were magical years, despite the tiredness that lived in my bones like winter cold that never quite left. Amanda would practice violin in the evenings while I helped her with homework at our small kitchen table, the sweet sound of Mozart mixing with the smell of the dinner I'd made between jobs. She'd do her ballet routines in our tiny living room, spinning and leaping with a grace that took my breath away, while I clapped from the couch where I was mending clothes or balancing our budget on a calculator older than she was. "Someday I'm going to be famous," she'd tell me, her eyes bright with the certainty that only children have. "I'm going to play violin in a big orchestra and dance on stages all over the world, and you'll be in the front row at every show." "I know you will, sweetheart," I'd say, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. Her success felt like my success, her dreams felt like my old hopes coming back to life. When Amanda smiled, it was like watching sunrise after the longest night of winter. I wrote down everything, every recital, every competition, every small win. Our walls were covered with photos of Amanda in recital dresses I'd sewn myself, holding trophies we couldn't afford to display properly but treasured anyway. I kept scrapbooks filled with programs from shows and newspaper clippings when she won local competitions. Each win felt like proof that all the giving up had been worth it, that love really could turn into opportunity if you were willing to give up everything else. By high school, Amanda had become amazingly talented. She was first chair violin in the school orchestra, lead dancer in every recital, and had started writing her own music that amazed her teachers. College people were already calling our house, offering scholarships to fancy music programs. I'd take messages on our old answering machine, my hands shaking as I wrote down the names of schools I'd only dreamed she might attend. The proof felt overwhelming. Mrs. Henderson from the high school guidance office called me in for a special meeting just to tell me how amazing Amanda was, how her teachers had never seen such natural talent combined with hard work. "You should be incredibly proud," she said, looking at me across her desk with real admiration. "Whatever you've done to support her music education has clearly worked. She's going to have her pick of the finest music schools in the country." I cried in my car after that meeting, sitting in the school parking lot with tears streaming down my face as I realized that everything, every missed meal, every extra shift, every night I'd fallen asleep in work clothes because I was too tired to change, had led to this moment. My daughter was going to have opportunities I'd never dreamed of, and I'd been the one to make it possible. The scholarship offers started coming in January of Amanda's senior year. Juilliard, Curtis Institute, New England Conservatory, envelopes with fancy letterheads that I'd handle like they were made of spun gold. Each acceptance letter felt like a personal victory, proof that giving up things really could turn into success if you loved someone enough to give up everything for their dreams. "Mom, I got accepted to Juilliard with a full scholarship," she announced one spring evening, waving the letter like a victory flag. "Can you believe it? Juilliard." I cried that night, sitting alone in my kitchen after Amanda had gone to bed, tears of joy mixing with tears of tiredness and relief. 20 years of working multiple jobs, of choosing between groceries and gas money, of wearing the same coat for 6 winters while buying Amanda new dance shoes every few months. It had all been worth it. My daughter was going to live the life I'd always dreamed of, and I'd been the one to make it possible. During her freshman year at Juilliard, Amanda called home every week, her voice bubbling with excitement about professors who'd played with the world's greatest orchestras, about practice rooms in buildings where musical legends had once studied. She'd describe her tiny dorm room, her roommate from Switzerland whose family owned vineyards, the intensity of studying music 12 hours a day with people who understood that level of hard work. "I know how hard you worked for this, Mom," she'd say during those calls, her voice soft with thanks. "When I'm performing at Lincoln Center someday, I'll dedicate the program to you. You're the reason any of this is possible." Those words felt like the sweetest victory, proof that love and giving up things really did come back around when it mattered most. I'd lie in bed after those conversations, tired from another 14-hour day but filled with a happiness I'd never felt before. My daughter was living my dreams, and she understood what it had cost me to give them to her. But something began to change during Amanda's sophomore year. The phone calls became shorter, less frequent, filled with complaints about how demanding her professors were, how competitive everything had become. When I'd ask about her classes or upcoming shows, she'd give brief answers and change the subject to her social life or her new boyfriend Marcus, a trust fund kid whose family owned art galleries in Manhattan and Soho. Marcus is taking me to the Met Gala next month, she mentioned casually during one call, like attending one of the most exclusive events in New York was something that happened to everyone. His family has a table every year. It's supposed to be amazing. I felt a strange pang in my chest, not jealousy exactly, but a growing awareness that Amanda was entering a world where my giving up things would seem small and ordinary compared to the wealth her new friends took for granted. When I'd mention how proud I was of her accomplishments, she'd brush off my comments with growing impatience. "It's not like you're the only parent who ever supported their kid," she said during one particularly difficult conversation. "Marcus's parents have been funding his photography career since high school, and you don't hear him going on and on about their sacrifices. They just write checks and don't make a big deal about it." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I told myself it was just the stress of school, the normal process of a young adult becoming independent. Amanda was discovering a world where her classmates' families could afford things I'd never dreamed of. Private teachers, summer programs in Europe, instruments that cost more than I made in a year. Of course, she was gaining perspective on what giving up things really meant in that context. But the brushing off grew more pronounced as months passed. When I'd mentioned the years I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for her lessons, Amanda would sigh and say that lots of parents worked multiple jobs. When I'd remember the times I'd gone without so she could have what she needed, she'd point out that making sacrifices for your children wasn't unusual or heroic. It was just what parents were supposed to do. "Everyone makes sacrifices, Mom," became her standard response whenever I'd try to share a memory of our struggles or express how proud I was of what we'd accomplished together. "You act like you're the only mother who ever worked hard for her kid. It's honestly kind of embarrassing when you talk like that in front of my friends." The pattern became a wall between us, built from Amanda's growing sophistication and my apparent inability to understand that what I'd considered extraordinary was actually just baseline parenting in the world she now inhabited. She'd forgotten what it felt like to want something desperately and not be able to afford it, because I'd made sure she never experienced that particular pain. During her junior year, the shift became more dramatic and cruel. Amanda rarely called home anymore, and when she did, her conversations were full of complaints about how unsophisticated I was, how embarrassing it was that I still worked at the bakery, how awkward she felt when her friends asked about her family background. "I wish you'd gone to college," she said during one particularly hurtful call. "It's weird being the only person here whose mother never had a career. Everyone else's parents are doctors or lawyers or artists. What am I supposed to say when people ask what you do? That you make donuts and clean toilets?" "I didn't go to college because I was busy making sure you could," I replied, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "I gave up nursing school so you could have violin lessons and dance classes and everything else you needed to get where you are." "Oh, please," Amanda scoffed, her voice dripping with the kind of meanness I'd never heard from her before. "You gave up nursing school because you got pregnant and married Dad. Don't blame me for your life choices. Besides, everyone's parents make sacrifices. That's what having kids means. Stop acting like you did something special or heroic." That conversation haunted me for weeks, replaying in my mind while I kneaded dough at 4 a.m., while I scrubbed other people's bathrooms, while I answered phones at the medical office. My daughter had rewritten our entire history, turning my conscious choices to put her dreams first into personal failures she was ashamed of. She'd forgotten that I'd been 22 when her father died, that I'd had a full scholarship to nursing school, that I'd chosen her future over mine every single day for 20 years. But the breaking point came during Amanda's senior year, when she brought Marcus home for Thanksgiving. I'd been so excited to meet the boy she'd been dating for 2 years, had spent days preparing a feast with all her favorite dishes. I'd even splurged on a new tablecloth and matching napkins, wanting everything to be perfect for this introduction to her boyfriend. I'd taken vacation days from all 3 of my jobs, something I'd never done before, because I wanted to focus entirely on making this visit special. Marcus was everything I'd expected. Handsome, polished, wearing clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He was polite but condescending, the kind of polite that makes you feel small and inadequate without being able to point to anything specific he'd said wrong. He complimented the house with the tone someone might use to praise a child's crayon drawing, and his smile never quite reached his eyes when he looked at me. During dinner, the conversation turned to their post-graduation plans. Amanda was interviewing for positions with several major orchestras, while Marcus had been offered a gallery show through his family's connections in the art world. The contrast between their situations was stark. Amanda working desperately to prove herself worthy of opportunities, while Marcus simply inherited them through family wealth. "Amanda's so talented," I said, beaming with pride as I passed the mashed potatoes I'd made from scratch. "She's worked so hard to get where she is. We both have, really. There were years when I worked 3 jobs just to pay for her lessons and—" "Mom, stop," Amanda interrupted sharply, her face turning red with embarrassment. "No one wants to hear about your sacrifices again." The room fell silent except for the gentle clink of silverware against plates. I felt heat rise in my cheeks as I realized I'd committed some social error I didn't understand, had broken some unspoken rule about what was appropriate to discuss in front of Marcus. "I think it's sweet," Marcus said with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, his tone carefully measured to sound generous while actually being patronizing. "It's nice that you were able to help Amanda with her music education. My parents did the same thing for me, of course, but they never made such a big deal about it. Because making sacrifices for your children is normal," Amanda said, shooting me a warning look that made my stomach clench with shame. "Everyone's parents make sacrifices. It's not something you're supposed to brag about or expect credit for. It's just what parents do." I sat there in stunned silence while my daughter dismissed 20 years of my life as ordinary, unremarkable, something that deserved no recognition or gratitude because everyone did it. Marcus nodded approvingly, clearly impressed by Amanda's sophisticated understanding that parental sacrifice was simply the cost of doing business in child rearing. "Exactly," Marcus agreed, cutting his turkey with the precision of someone who'd grown up at formal dinner tables. "My parents have supported my photography career since I was in middle school, but they don't expect me to thank them constantly for it. They understand that investing in your children's future is just part of being a responsible parent." Amanda smiled at him gratefully as if he'd just defended her against some unreasonable attack. "Thank you for understanding. It gets exhausting when people act like normal parental responsibility is some kind of heroic sacrifice." After they left to go out with Amanda's high school friends, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the dirty dishes and the leftover turkey I'd spent 2 days preparing. For the first time in 23 years, I allowed myself to truly calculate what I'd given up for Amanda's dreams. The nursing career that would have given me purpose and financial security. The evenings I could have spent taking classes or developing my own interests instead of driving to violin lessons across town. The relationships I'd never pursued because I was always too tired or too busy or too broke to invest in my own social life. The simple pleasure of buying myself something nice occasionally instead of calculating whether Amanda needed new rosin for her bow or shoes for dance class. I'd given Amanda everything, and she'd convinced herself it was nothing because she'd never known what it felt like to go without. She'd rewritten our history to make my sacrifices seem ordinary, my love seem burdensome, my pride in her achievements seem inappropriate and embarrassing. That night I made a decision. Amanda thought giving up things was ordinary, that everyone did it, that it wasn't worth acknowledging or appreciating. She thought giving up your dreams for someone else's was just the baseline expectation of motherhood. She was about to learn what real loss felt like. The kind that breaks your heart and leaves you empty-handed, staring at the ruins of everything you thought was guaranteed. But this wouldn't be random destruction. This would be surgical, precise, devastating. I was going to teach Amanda what real loss felt like by making her give up everything she'd built on the foundation of mine. I started researching that very night, sitting at my computer until dawn, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I learned everything I could about the music industry, orchestral politics, and the delicate ecosystem of professional recommendations that could make or break a young musician's career. Amanda had no idea how small that world really was, how much it depended on relationships and reputation, how easily a promising career could be derailed by the right words whispered in the right ears. Over the next 6 months, I became a different person, a predator studying her prey. Instead of the working-class bakery employee Amanda was ashamed of, I transformed myself into someone who could move through her world undetected. I took out loans I couldn't afford to buy better clothes, got my hair done at expensive salons, learned to speak the language of classical music with the fluency that comes from 20 years of listening to your daughter practice. I began attending concerts and recitals at venues where Amanda's instructors and potential employers spent their time. I volunteered for music education nonprofits, joined arts patron societies, and slowly built relationships with the people who would decide my daughter's future. To them, I was just another music lover with time and money to support the arts. They had no idea I was Amanda Sullivan's mother, the bakery worker she was so ashamed to claim. The beauty of my plan was that Amanda had taught me exactly what to do. She'd spent years complaining about the politics of the music world, about how unfair it was that some students got opportunities based on their family connections rather than pure talent. She told me stories about classmates who'd been blacklisted for various scandals, about how quickly careers could end when the wrong people decided you were trouble. She'd also confided her deepest fears, her fear that she wasn't quite good enough for the top-tier orchestras, her worry that her working-class background made her an outsider in a world of privileged artists, her terror that she'd end up teaching violin lessons in small towns instead of performing on the stages she'd dreamed about since childhood. All of those vulnerabilities became weapons in my careful campaign to destroy everything she'd built on the foundation of my sacrifices. And the most beautiful part? She'd never see it coming because she'd convinced herself I was too ordinary, too simple, too beneath her notice to be capable of sophisticated revenge. The first strike would be her graduation recital. The event that was supposed to launch her career would instead become the beginning of its end. I started with her graduation recital, the most important performance of her senior year and the event that would determine which orchestras offered her positions. Amanda had been practicing for months, perfecting a program of pieces that showcased her technical skill and artistic maturity. Music directors from several major orchestras were planning to attend, along with talent scouts and artistic directors who could launch her career. This was going to be bigger than just ruining a performance. This was going to be the systematic destruction of everything she'd ever worked for. 3 weeks before the recital, I began spreading carefully crafted rumors through the network of relationships I'd built. I told Patricia Hamilton, the board president of the Metropolitan Youth Orchestra, that I'd heard concerning things about Amanda Sullivan's character and reliability. I mentioned to Dr. Richardson, who consulted for several major orchestras, that there were whispers about Amanda's professionalism and ability to handle pressure. I hate to say anything, I confided to Margaret Chin over coffee, knowing she'd repeat every word to her husband, the concertmaster of the State Symphony, but I've heard some troubling things about that young violinist, Amanda Sullivan. Apparently there have been issues with substance abuse and erratic behavior. Such a shame when talented young people can't handle the pressure. None of it was true, but truth doesn't matter when whispered in the right ears by the right people. The classical music world thrives on gossip and reputation, and once doubt is planted about a young musician's character or reliability, it spreads like wildfire through the small, interconnected community of professionals who control every major opportunity. By the time Amanda's recital arrived, half the industry representatives who'd planned to attend had quietly canceled their appearances. Those who did come spent the evening whispering to each other about the concerning rumors they'd heard about the young violinist, analyzing her performance for signs of the instability they'd been warned about. Amanda played beautifully that night, pouring her heart into every note, but I watched from the audience as potential employers exchanged skeptical glances and made notes that would exclude her from consideration. She had no idea that her mother, the woman whose sacrifices she dismissed as ordinary, was systematically destroying the career those sacrifices had made possible. But this was just the opening movement. I was building to a crescendo that would shatter her completely. Over the summer, as Amanda auditioned for orchestra positions across the country, I escalated my campaign through the network I'd infiltrated. Before each audition, I made sure the right people heard the right rumors about Amanda's character, reliability, and artistic integrity. I suggested that she was difficult to work with, that she had inappropriate relationships with instructors, that her family background made her unstable and desperate in ways that could become problematic. The beauty of the classical music world is that it's both incredibly small and incredibly snobbish. A whispered concern from the right person can eliminate a candidate before they even step onto the audition stage. And because Amanda had spent years teaching me about how this world worked, I knew exactly which people to target and which rumors would be most damaging. But I wasn't just destroying her career. I was watching her slowly realize that something was wrong, that the future she'd counted on was slipping away for reasons she couldn't understand. The confusion and panic in her voice during our phone calls was almost as satisfying as the actual sabotage. One by one, the orchestra positions Amanda had dreamed of slipped away. First the Chicago Symphony, then the Boston Pops, then the smaller regional orchestras she'd considered as stepping stones to bigger opportunities. Each rejection letter was polite but devastating, thanking her for her audition while explaining that they'd decided to go with other candidates who were better suited to the organization's current needs. "I don't understand what's happening," Amanda cried during one of our increasingly rare phone calls, her voice raw with desperation. "My auditions are going well, my instructors say I'm playing the best I've ever played, but I keep getting rejected. It's like there's some conspiracy against me." "I'm sure it's just a competitive field, sweetheart," I said with the same dismissive comfort she'd perfected over the years. "Everyone faces rejection in the arts. Maybe you're being a little dramatic about it. These things work themselves out." But they wouldn't work themselves out because I was about to deliver the blow that would destroy not just her career but her soul. By fall, Amanda was growing desperate and I could taste her fear through the phone. She'd been rejected by every major orchestra she'd auditioned for, and word was beginning to spread in the small music community that there might be something seriously wrong with Amanda Sullivan's candidacy. Musicians started treating her differently at industry events. Colleagues from Juilliard stopped returning her calls, and even her former instructors became politely distant when she asked for advice or recommendations. That's when I prepared to deliver the killing blow, the one that would destroy not just her career, but her faith in everything she'd ever believed about herself. I'd learned during my research that Amanda had applied for a prestigious fellowship that would fund 2 years of study with master musicians in Vienna, Austria. It was her dream opportunity, the kind of program that could rehabilitate a struggling career and open doors that had been closed by the rumors surrounding her domestic auditions. Only 12 musicians worldwide were selected each year, and Amanda had made it to the final round of consideration. This fellowship represented more than just an opportunity. It was her last hope, her final chance to salvage the career she'd spent her entire life building. And I was about to take it away from her with the precision of a surgeon removing a beating heart. The selection committee included Dr. Wilhelm Brenner, the renowned Austrian violinist who would be Amanda's primary instructor if she received the fellowship. Dr. Brenner was known for his exacting standards and his intolerance for students who brought drama or controversy to his program. He was also, I discovered through careful research, a man who valued traditional family structures and was deeply concerned about the moral character of his students. 2 weeks before the final selection meeting, I sent Dr. Brenner a carefully crafted letter, written on expensive stationery and signed with a false name, claiming to be a concerned colleague who felt morally obligated to share troubling information about one of his fellowship candidates. The letter was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, designed to appeal to Dr. Brenner's traditional values while making Amanda appear ungrateful, dishonest, and morally compromised. It painted her as exactly the kind of student he would never want in his program. Someone who lacked integrity, loyalty, and respect for the sacrifices that had made her education possible. Miss Sullivan has repeatedly told colleagues that she is embarrassed by her mother's occupation and social status. I wrote with surgical precision. She has gone so far as to deny her family's existence when questioned by potential employers, claiming to be orphaned rather than acknowledge her working-class upbringing. While I understand that students from disadvantaged backgrounds may feel insecure about their origins, I find this level of deception concerning, particularly given the other rumors about her character and reliability that have been circulating in our community. 3 days later, Amanda received a brief letter informing her that the fellowship had been awarded to other candidates. No explanation was provided, no feedback offered. Just a polite rejection that ended her last hope of salvaging the career she'd spent 20 years building. That night, Amanda called me sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words, and I smiled in the darkness because the sound of her complete breakdown was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. "Mom, I lost the Vienna Fellowship," she cried, her voice shattered beyond repair. "That was my last chance. I've been rejected everywhere and I don't know why. It's like the entire classical music world has decided I'm poison. I might have to give up music completely and find some other career." The desperation in her voice was intoxicating. After years of dismissing my sacrifices as ordinary, she was finally learning what it felt like to lose everything you'd worked for. "I'm sorry to hear that, honey," I said, my voice carefully modulated to sound sympathetic without being overly concerned. "But maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Lots of people have to change careers when they're young. It's not the end of the world. Change careers." Amanda's voice cracked with disbelief. "Music is my life. It's all I've ever known. It's what I've worked for since I was 6 years old. It's what you worked for. All those years of lessons and practice and sacrifices, it's all for nothing now." "Well," I said slowly, "I suppose those sacrifices were just what any parent would do. You said so yourself. Everyone makes sacrifices for their children. Maybe mine weren't as special as I thought they were." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "You know what happened to my career, don't you?" I didn't answer directly. Instead, I said, "I think you should consider your options, Amanda. Maybe it's time to be realistic about your future. Not everyone gets to live their childhood dreams. Sometimes we have to sacrifice the things we love most." The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me she was beginning to understand the scope of what I'd done. "You destroyed everything," she whispered. "You destroyed my entire future." "I didn't destroy anything," I replied calmly. "I just taught you what real sacrifice feels like. You spent years telling me that giving up my dreams for yours was ordinary, unremarkable, nothing special. Now you know what it feels like to lose something that matters to you. Now you understand what I gave up when I chose your future over mine." Amanda was crying again, but these were different tears. Not the tears of disappointment, but the tears of someone who'd finally understood the true cost of taking someone's love for granted. "I never asked you to give up nursing school," she sobbed. "I never asked you to work 3 jobs. You chose to do that." "You're right," I said. "I chose to sacrifice my dreams so you could have yours. Just like you're now being forced to sacrifice your dreams so you can understand what that choice really meant. The difference is that I did it willingly, out of love. Your sacrifice is happening whether you want it or not." "This isn't love," Amanda said, her voice growing stronger with anger. "This is revenge. This is cruel." "No, sweetheart," I replied. "Cruelty is dismissing someone's sacrifices as ordinary. Cruelty is being ashamed of the mother who gave up everything for your success. Cruelty is telling someone that their love doesn't matter because everyone does the same thing. I'm not being cruel. I'm being educational." "You can't do this," Amanda said desperately. "You can't destroy my entire career just to prove a point. Call those people back. Tell them you lied. Fix this." "I'm afraid that's not possible," I said gently. "Reputations in the classical music world are like fine china. Once they're broken, they can never be completely repaired. You'll have to find a new dream now, just like I did when I chose to prioritize yours over mine." "What am I supposed to do?" Amanda asked, the fight going out of her voice. "Music is all I know. It's all I've ever been good at." "You'll figure it out," I said, using the same dismissive tone she'd perfected when discussing my concerns. "Lots of people have to start over. Maybe you can teach music lessons to children. Or maybe you'll discover talents you never knew you had. Change can be good for people." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, looking at the framed photos of Amanda's performances that covered every wall. 20 years of recitals and competitions and achievements, all made possible by sacrifices she dismissed as ordinary parental duty. Now those photos felt like artifacts from someone else's life, memories of dreams that had been built on a foundation of gratitude that never existed. 6 months later, Amanda was working as a receptionist at a dental office in Queens, her violin gathering dust in a closet she couldn't afford to expand. Her relationship with Marcus had ended when it became clear that her career prospects were non-existent. Apparently, his family's social circle had no use for failed musicians from working-class backgrounds. She called me regularly now, apologizing for how she'd treated me, begging me to help repair the damage to her reputation, promising to be a grateful daughter if I would just give her back the future I'd taken away. "I understand now, Mom," she said during one of our weekly conversations. "I understand what you sacrificed for me. I was wrong to dismiss it. I was wrong to be ashamed of you. Please, if there's any way to fix this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "I know you're sorry, sweetheart," I said gently, "and I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't undo consequences. You taught me that my sacrifices didn't matter because everyone makes them. Now you know what it feels like to lose something precious because of someone else's choices." "But I want to make it right," she pleaded. "I want to appreciate what you did for me. I want to take care of you now." "That's very sweet," I replied. "But I've learned to take care of myself. I've learned that depending on other people's gratitude is a dangerous foundation for your own happiness. You taught me that lesson very thoroughly." The last time I spoke to Amanda, she was crying again, asking me why I couldn't just let the past be the past, why I couldn't forgive and forget and help her rebuild the career she'd lost. "Because some lessons can only be learned through loss," I told her. "You needed to understand what real sacrifice feels like. Not the willing kind motivated by love, but the unwilling kind that comes as punishment for taking love for granted. You needed to know what it's like to lose everything you've worked for because someone else decided your dreams didn't matter." "Will you ever help me get my music career back?" she asked. "I don't think so," I said. I spent 20 years sacrificing my dreams so you could have yours. Now you get to spend the rest of your life understanding what those sacrifices actually meant. Now when Amanda calls me to share her struggles and disappointments, I listen patiently and then offer the same dismissive comfort she'd perfected. Everyone faces setbacks, dear. It's just life. Stop acting like your situation is special. And when she hangs up the phone, defeated and broken, I smile because sometimes the best education comes from experiencing exactly what you put someone else through. Losing what you love most because you failed to value what someone else loved most about giving it to you.